Dongyi was the name China had for Japan in the olden days. The two countries have a long history where countless Chinese treasures cross the sea, ending up in Japanese hands. Many of these cultural relics are still revered in Japan today. That said, few if any in China know much about them. Let us take a journey through time to learn more about these unique pieces that are housed and protected overseas. The biggest museum in Japan is the Tokyo National Museum. In the Chinese cultural relic section of the museum is a bronze drinking vessel made 3,000 years ago during the Shang dynasty, with decorative patterns of horns and a pair of fierce eyes. This bronzeware was named after a Chinese mythical beast, Taotie. Such bronzeware was a drinking vessel used to hold wine during rituals. Designed after a mythical creature for spiritual purposes, it reflected deep fear and respect by the ancient Chinese for the heavens. Bronzeware are alloys of copper and tin. Ancient Chinese bronzeware are considered to be of the highest quality. With exceptionally skilled craftsmanship, they represented the extent of cultural civilization in ancient China. The Japanese have always admired Chinese bronzeware and hold some of the rarest pieces of it in the world. This piece was brought to Japan from China in the last century by a Japanese collector. It is now a national treasure in Japan. Even today, the Japanese still hold a great passion for Chinese relics. Exhibitions on ancient Chinese bronzeware always succeed in attracting large crowds.
中国のいろんな文化が日本に来てるっていうのが分かって、お茶の世界の中でも生きてるとか、すごいそういう意味では勉強になって。
これは漢字だ。非常に可愛らしい。
Personal collectors fall in love with ancient Chinese bronzeware at first sight. How did these treasures make it to Japan in the earlier half of the 20th century? The crew set off to uncover some answers. This is the Yodo River in South Kyoto. In the mid-17th century, a Chinese monk landed ashore here. Master Yin Yuan was born in Fuzhou, China, and came to Japan when war broke out. He was a key figure in restoring the ways of Japanese Zen. Unique to other Japanese temples, Mampukuji Temple, built by Master Yin Yuan, retained characteristics of Chinese culture. Baron Shunsoi Sumitomo was the owner of a copper mine. He was also an avid fan of bronze. Houses over 500 pieces of ancient Chinese bronze relics. This is another drinking vessel in the shape of a mythical bird, which was said to ward off evil spirits. This was a common bronzeware design in ancient China. Most ancient Chinese bronzeware were made during the Shang, Zhou and Han dynasties. They were largely holding vessels, musical instruments or weaponry. Drinking vessels for rituals during the Shang and Zhou period are considered to be the masterpieces of ancient bronzeware. Yin Ruins in Anyang, Henan province was the historical capital of the late Shang dynasty, the center of all politics, religion and culture during that era. At the archaeological site here, a large number of cultural relics were unearthed that has led the later generations to understand how ancient Chinese offered their best items in tribute to the heavens, in their belief that everything happens according to heaven's will. Chen Jin, a research expert on ancient bronzeware in China and Japan.
中国的青铜时代是中国历史上的所谓的夏商周，是吧？那么这个时代在中国历史上发展的过程当中，它当然是非常重要。从国家的形成，是吧，到整个中国历史的一个基础，政治的也好，人文的也好，是吧？奠定了这么一个基础的一个时代。那么这个时代真能代表这个时代的东西是什么？就是青铜器。要了解中国的这个时代，必须。
Sunokuhakuku is indeed the bridge that links people today with historical Chinese culture. Hirokawa Mamoru studied under the museum's former curator. Today, his job is to teach museum guides. These guides work on a voluntary basis and relate the history of each item on display to visitors.
今日のメニューはですね、一応まず今シーズンで、展示変わったところを、ご紹介するということなんですが、同じですので、
The volunteer guides are mostly comprised of middle-aged and senior men and women who exhibit a passion for this work comparable to that of college students. Today they learn how to introduce a funerary object.
これ古い本なんかでは春秋時代とかいうふうに紹介されて、いたこともあるんですが、今の研究ではおそらく戦国の前期から中期ぐらいの紀元前、4、5世紀ぐらいのもんだろうというふうに、考えております。
ズッキューの大きさどれぐらいなんですか？
大きさ高さが20何センチ、これぐらいですね。
これですか？
はい。どっちも。どっちも。はい。あ、
それで
すいません。上の方はですね、もうちょっと大きかったですね。かなり大きいですね。すいません。はい。はい。
Such lessons equip volunteer guides with professional knowledge on Chinese bronzeware. A Chinese antique bronzeware collector lives in this part of Tokyo. Toru Hashimoto has been an avid collector for over 30 years and shares with the crew some of his most prized items.
これは主という青銅器の蓋の部分なんです。それでこの下にあるものの、ものをここに取ってまあ神様に備えるというか。
Amongst his collections, he pays special care towards those with inscriptions. Inscriptions are important leads in understanding ancient history too. An epigraphy expert, he is able to read inscriptions that most can't.
それからそれ、晩年、美寿、眉毛に美寿、寿、死、孫孫長く宝として用いよう。ここのラインが何とも言えない緊張感と、それからこの線の緊張感。
A total of over 400 ancient Chinese bronze seals are his prized possession.
これは多分五冠から新ぐらいのものだと思うんですが、こういう壁蛇虫という、獅子に似た想像上の動物で、でこれが取れるんですね。親と子供と孫で3タオル。
Hashimoto believes this to be the personal seal of Cao Cao's son.
三国志にその中にずっとあって、東平霊王の木という人です。いわゆるだから姓が曹、そうですよね。それで名前が木。そうするとこの曹木。うん。号も号が押村区は出ていないんですよね。
Hashimoto started collecting ancient bronzeware 30 years ago, exhausting all his savings. With the rapid economic development in China today and the increasing interest in cultural relics, his collection is now worth more than 10 times what he paid for it.
どうして出そうと思わないでオークションに？オークション、例えばお金がなくても私にとってはこの品物を例えばこういうふうに好きな品物をこう見てる、そうすると心が豊かになります。お金があっても心は豊かにならない。ですから例えばこれを全部売ってお金のことが金庫に入ってる。心は多分今より寂しいと思います。充実感もないと思います。
His greatest wish is to exhibit his collection so that more can learn about these priceless treasures. In China, a systematic collection of ancient bronzeware began in the northern Song dynasty. The imperial family recorded a collection of 839 ancient bronzewares during Emperor Huizong's rule. By Emperor Qianlong's time in the Qing dynasty, over 1,500 ancient bronzewares were recorded in the archive of the imperial collection. Sendai City in Japan. The crew visit Professor Noboru Tomita at Tohoku Gakuen University, an expert on Chinese relics in the 20th century. He mentions to the crew that the ancient Japanese knew little about Chinese bronzeware, and so the collecting of it came much later.
ほとんど日本で言えば室町ぐらいまで入ってるんです。お坊さん持ってきたんですかね。前奏もいるし日奏合劇で入ったのもあると思います。それは茶道具として入ってるものです。政治の花池なんかと同じ感覚です。
Chinese relics have suffered due to modern history. This is a photograph of Beijing in 1901, when the Eight-Nation Alliance invaded China. Troops were selling treasures robbed from the Forbidden City on the streets. A Japanese war archive logged this scenario, where priceless treasures were sold for a fraction of their worth on the streets during those chaotic times. Thousands of buyers congregated to buy them. There was almost no place to stand. A witness to this scene, Yang Jiangao, wrote in his biography, every piece of treasure in the city was taken away to different countries, leaving not a single piece of imperial treasure behind, only an empty palace. Foreign ships loaded with our treasures filled the harbor, ready to set sail for foreign lands.
中国人にとって文物の流出というのは誠に痛ましいことであると思います。それは世界における近代の成り立ちということです。ヨーロッパにおいて産業革命が成立する。その結果としてですね、力、富を背景にしてそれまでの伝統的な社会、中国で言えば伝統王朝体制は動揺し崩壊してまいります。これは世界史における決定的な瞬間です。日本もそうでした。朝鮮もそうです。世界中、ヨーロッパ以外全てが経験したことです。
Atop a small hill in the center of Tokyo City sits The most renowned items at the Eisai Bunko Museum are these two bronzewares. Both are national treasures in Japan. Their owner, Osakawa Moritatsu, used to own the museum as well. Was a descendant of the feudal lord Osakawa clan in the Edo period. Well versed in Han studies through reading ancient books, he was a connoisseur and collector of Chinese cultural Many of the bronze collections in Sunokuhakuku are items lost during the Eight-Nation Alliance invasion. This ancient wine container was bought by Shunsoi Sumitomo in 1904 at the sky-high price of 4,000 yen. The design of a tiger wrapped around a man has two interpretations. Some say it symbolizes a celestial tiger consuming evil spirits. Others say the tiger is protecting the man. Either way, it's certainly an intriguing piece. Later, the museum bought 11 bronze bells like this. Bronze bells originated from Weifang in Shandong, China. Madame Chen Jin is a local entrepreneur and has started venturing in recent years into culture-related businesses. Her shop specializes in replicas related to late Qing politician Chen Jin, who was also an epigrapher and cultural relics collector. Weifang was Chen Jin's hometown. There's a replica of a rubbing that Chen Jin used to own, as well as some of his calligraphy works. Madame Chen introduces herself as a member of the local Chen family clan.
对陈介奇这个伟大的收藏家，这个鲁迅也有一定的对他一定的肯定。郭沫若曾经就题词：“一代前无古人，后无来者的一代收藏家的陈介奇，莫过于是陈介奇。”所以，这个他的声誉，我感觉是享誉国内外的。本身他在中日友好这个文化交流上做了重大的贡献。
This residence of Chen Jin was built in 1850 and got the name Thousand Seals Tower for housing 7,000 ancient Who traveled to Tianjin for an answer from Chen Ji's 7th generation descendant, Chen Jin, who lives here. Since retirement, Chen Jin has spent most of his time researching Chen Ji. Chen Jin brought out the elder Chen's handwritten letters for the crew to see.
这都是给这个玉符嘛，玉符是嘛符，就是他说臣服嘛。如心读书，对，若父母惧病弱，不努力读书做人，何以续？就是没法继，就是不认真读书，怎么继承这个家学？是没有传给长房。
Chen Jin is a direct descendant and related to Chen Ji by blood. He relates some of his family's past to the crew.
传给二儿子那一阵儿呢，就是那个他们后来因为生活问题吧，那个就给卖了，卖了就是最后流失到日本去了。他们也没有继承这个家学。 是吧？生活比较那个困难，可能是。具体怎么卖的，谁卖的，或者是卖了多少钱，这些一概不清楚。这也没法了解了，因为也可能不是一次卖的，也可能是多次卖的。
Chen Jin used to be in the construction business. After his father passed away, he felt a responsibility to inherit his family teachings. In 1964. Chen Jin's father donated the family's inherited relics to the country and was lauded by the then Minister of Culture. Chen Jin's grandfather, in cooperation with the government, retrieved the family's 7,000 ancient seals, now housed in the Palace Museum.
陈家这段历史也可以看出来，有些东西你只有公藏了，这个文化才能传承。 您如果私藏，这个文化就很有可能流失，就一定得提倡公藏。就是说，这个有物从来不服人，这他也是从历史这个角度来总结出来的。你确实也是，对吧？你没有一个人说你比如说，他能够把他的这个财富能够往下传几代，就物质财富往下传几代的没有，精神财富有。 物质财富说往下传过3代的都没有。
Japanese collector of Chinese ancient bronzeware, Toru Hashimoto, who's also a fan of Chen Ji, calls Tokyo's Marunouchi district home. Hashimoto has been a seal engraver for over 40 years. In Japan, there are very few engravers left who can engrave seals by hand. Outside of work, Hashimoto engrosses himself in books related to Chen Ji. Self-taught, he is now able to fluently read Chinese.
そうですね、もし、神様が許してくれることであれば、両親以外に誰かと、一日会って話していいということになったら、陳海輝とゆっくり話したいです。何を話す？まあ親戚いろいろですね。ですから特に親戚の交わりというのは、まあ陳海輝さんの偉い大政治家で。 偉い方ですけれども、私なんかも何でもないただの庶民ですけれども、その親戚の交わりに関してあればもう上下関係なく素直に、交わりができるんじゃないかと思います。お待たせいたしました。
Today, the volunteer guides at Sunokuhakuku gather at the gallery to put into practice what they have learned. To sharpen their presentations, the guides enthusiastically check with their teacher. This is the piece that Hirokawa taught about in his last lecture.
中国の歴史にも興味を持ちましたし、中国自体にも興味を持ちましたし、そのためにわざわざ旅行をして博物館や美術館に行くというそんなこともしておりますので。
With an admiration for Chinese culture, these volunteers convey what they've learned to museum visitors.
"日本ではですね、紀元前11世紀なんて言ったらもう全く文化もないような時代にね、この時代にもこんな素晴らしいのがね中国であったんだなというのをもう今すごいなと圧倒されてます。
Published over a century ago, this is the first catalogue introducing Chinese bronzeware in detail to the world. Utilizing the most advanced publishing techniques of the time to present the charms of bronzeware vividly, this catalogue quickly enhanced the world's understanding of bronzeware and was an eye-opener for European collectors.
日本是最早的用这个照相，就是我们都是用线图、拓片来注入。日本是最早的这个就是全屋博物馆的这个全屋清赏，那是1916年、1917年的时候，用写真、用照相来注入这个铜器的，它比我们的要早。那么这里面我自己的感觉，这个是和日本的这个有很长的一个所谓的汉学的传统，和他们的这个学术研究有一些关系。就是这个学术对藏品的研究，进一步确定了这种东西的这个揭示了这些东西的学术价值，对吧？它的历史价值。当然，这里面还有它本身青铜器本身的这个艺术价值在。这样，通过这种最权威的这些学者的研究，那么这些价值不断的被人认可。
Gustav Adolf, Crown Prince of Sweden, was a fan of Chinese arts. In May 1922, he wrote to Shunsui Sumitomo asking for a copy of the catalogue. In November of that year, Shunsui Sumitomo sent the latest edition, along with English annotations, to the Crown Prince. Impressed by the splendor of Chinese bronzeware, the Crown Prince made his way to Japan in 1926 with one goal: to view Shunsui Sumitomo's collection in person. Regrettably, Sumitomo passed away earlier that year. On his passing, Shunsui Sumitomo was praised by European newspapers as the world's figurative collector of Chinese bronzeware. It was at that moment that Chinese bronzeware started to become a hot commodity amongst international collectors.
日本当初就是受了中国文化的影响，你比如那真正和尚，对吧？你看是，对吧？他那好多，他从那个愚昧发展到文明社会的时候，那真正和尚不是包括从建筑也好，从医疗也好，传过不少东西。
但现在还有一种倾向，就说好像就是咱的文物流失到外国就应该给要回来啊。啊，你怎么看这个？
那个事儿我不是这么看的，对不对？那些个就是说这个，如果要回来，当然更好，对吧？但是那个真正怎么讲呢？就是说这个不要回来，那也是对中国的这个文化的一种宣传。那不是这也是，所以说这任何事情都得一分为二的看，对吧？既有它不好的一面，又有它好的一面。
いらっしゃいますし、昔からのコレクションもありますから、そういうのを本当、逐次公開してくれればですね、やっぱり好きな方はそれで興味を持って、見ると思いますから。
鹿のこの丸彫りがあるんですが、この中は全部中空になっておりまして、金属部分は本当に2、3ミリの厚さで全部作っているということが分かっております。
This set of 12 bells was a musical instrument during the Warring States period in the 4th century BC that was uncovered at Jin village in China's Hunan province. The set originally had 14 bells. The other 2 are kept at the Royal Ontario Museum in Canada. The 61-character inscription hails the success of an ancient aristocrat in various battles. This is highly useful in analyzing the history of the early Warring States period. Today the bells can once again be heard in the Sunokuhakuku.
中国文明や文化の
The number and quality of Chinese relics housed in Japanese museums is astonishing. How did such a large collection of treasures make their way into these museums? Join us for the final episode of Chinese Treasures of Japan, when we will hear the stories of collectors searching for more beauty than they can take in.